Hello, Raven fans, Oriole fans. Thank you for joining us here on our very special edition of Driving to the Top Productions and Ravori Sports here. So thank you very much for joining us. Like and subscribe to the Driving to the Top Productions and also to Ravori Sports. We definitely got it. Driving to the Top Productions. Also, too, we got a Facebook page as well. So we will go ahead and get that squared away for you as well. Definitely soon, very soon, our Fanatics rollout. So definitely, if you are looking for those Ravens jerseys, Orioles jerseys, we're going to have the links everywhere, along with our RavoriSports.company.site as well. All right, and we got a very special guest here today. So we got one of the guys who let's just call it like it is. I'm an African American, you're Caucasian, but I always thought you and I were more alike than what we look like, right? Like we listen to all the same Baltimore sports radio, all that stuff. Growing up in the same place, we were just talking like we lived like 20 minutes away from each other in Baltimore, and so even though we didn't know each other, so yeah. So have Matt Trigger on the phone, on the here with us today. Fowl Ball, definitely the podcast here. The Orioles podcast also too has a part with a actual former Raven, Dan Wilcox, as well. So check that out as well. So Matt, thank you very much for coming here today. The last time we were supposed to talk, we had a lot of big news, right? So I thought of you right away. I'm sure how happy you were that Brandon Hyde was fired as well. I was more surprised than I think some people were. I thought like the team had him in higher regard as well. I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt. What do you think about Hyde getting fired? I know you were not a fan, obviously.
Before I get into that, thank you, Charles, for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad that you're holding down Baltimore sports coverage for Driving to the Top. Adam's a great guy. Good cast over there. Thank you again for inviting me. We were supposed to get this done last week, but scheduling just didn't match up. But on to the topic of the week. Brandon Hyde got fired. I was happy initially because there was a point in time where I truly believed that it was on Hyde, and the team was playing very uninspired football. I mean, uninspired baseball. They looked like they were just going through the motions. They weren't playing with any pep in their step. They were getting their teeth kicked in by everybody. And now it might be a little bit more of an issue because Tony Manzolino has one win since the Orioles fired Brandon Hyde. So it's a little bit crazy to me that this didn't kick any of these guys in the ass.
I don't think they fired the biggest problem. I mean, I went over it this week on the channel earlier this week about what's wrong with the Orioles. I went through 6 things. I would have had Brandon Hyde on there. I think the biggest thing is starting pitching. You just don't have a clue. I mean, they got the clock cleaned again today. I thought it was worse than it looked. And I'm talking about we're airing this tomorrow, but we're going to air this the next day. But, the game against Boston, the first game today, I mean, it was worse than it looked because they had a third baseman pitching the last inning. But you got no pitching. And I don't know how you fix that. I mean, Brandon Hyde's an issue. Michael Elias is an issue. Adley's an issue. I think there's a lot of things that are an issue, but I don't know how you get around that one, man.
Well, historically, the Orioles have never fired a general manager in season. It's very uncommon in baseball, period, to fire your general manager, especially just about, I'm going to say a good 5 to 6 weeks outside of the trade deadline. It's becoming more and more apparent that Mike Elias is the issue. And it's not looking good. I think this is going to – I think Orioles fans need to buckle up because this is going to be a very, very, very tough June and July. I'm sorry. The trade deadline is more like 9 weeks away. The end of I think I made a mistake. It's the end of July. So it's more like 9 weeks away. But this is going to be a very rough couple of months. If they don't turn this around and start winning some ball games, There's going to be a lot of veterans that they're going to probably get on out of here before. I think they're going to have like a mini blow up over the offseason. I don't see Hyde. I mean, Hyde's gone. I don't see Elias lasting through the offseason unless we win 70 to 75 games and they salvage the season, which right now they're so bad. They're not even at 20 wins yet. We're here in the middle of or the end of May now. You really got to start thinking about what pieces aren't going to be here after July 31st.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that we trade Ryan O'Hearn, and that's going to tear this fan base apart. He's our best overall player right now. Then you're looking at probably Eflin being vied after, Sugano, all the guys that are on 1-year deals. Mountcastle's probably going to be a target for a first base needy playoff contender. I'm not saying he's tearing the cover off the ball, but he's going to hold some value. Cedric Mullins is probably going to be in Philadelphia or Los Angeles before the trade deadline. Possibly, even somewhere up north further. Then you got to look at, are you going to trade Jorge Mateo? Because if the team's going to be this bad, you might as well get all these guys that you want up in the minor leagues playing at the major league level just taking their lumps this season. Get Kobe Mayo up here permanently. Bring Dylan Beavers up here. Bring Enrique Bradfield Jr. or Judge Fabian. Hell, even consider Vance Honeycutt coming up here.
That's kind of quick. That's kind of quick for Honeycutt, man. He just started.
It is, but I'm just going through the Rolodex of guys that we have down the minors. You got to see what you have because if anybody pays attention to Elias and Sid from their Houston Astros days, they were incredibly reliant on prospect hoarding, and it almost ruined the Astros. They're lucky that they won a World Series once they let them both go to Baltimore. So to me, in order to save this franchise from itself, Elias and Sid need to go find their next project to fix. And that's not here. They've got if you want to be 100% honest though, Charles, the Orioles, outside of the top 5 or top 10 picks in the first couple of rounds, Elias hasn't hit on any of his prospects. It's been bad. It's been really bad.
I'm gonna get to Elias for sure, but I want to circle back to Hyde because you were really. What was the strong dislike? What have you look? Like I said, you're on the ground. You know things. You live in Baltimore. You go to the games more than So yeah. What without portraying anything, what more can you tell us about the dislike with Hyde that you had and some players had?
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what job you have. You and I both have our own careers that we have to attend to. If we underperform and we don't get the most out of the people that are working around us and with us, they're gonna fire us. They're gonna send us packing. Elias had the first overall pick from the 2022 draft. He was platooning him with Jorge Mateo. You have the first overall pick from a couple drafts beforehand with Adley Rutschman, and you can't figure out Adley after the beginning of April. He always comes in hot for spring training. He always looks like he's in fantastic shape. He always looks like he's doing X, Y, and Z to get better. And then once May hits, he falls off like a cliff. And it's been the consistently same thing for the last couple of years. You got Gunnar Henderson, who you probably brought back a little bit too soon from his injury. Westberg's hurt. Kauser's hurt, at different points of the year. Then you got, this lackadaisical everyday playing style. In the first 20 games, he had 16 different lineups. The guys aren't going out there and showing any hustle, any effort. They look defeated. This is the mentally weak ball team. And I'm gonna put the topic about Hyde to the side for 1 second. These guys that are on the Orioles, all these guys were superstars in Little League baseball, middle school baseball, high school baseball. Some of them were all-stars at every level of the minor leagues. Some went from the high school straight to the pros, and then some of them went to college, but they were still the best everywhere they've been. Now they're all together collectively, and they're getting the shit kicked out of them, for a lack of a better word, and they don't know how to respond.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to respond to what's going on with their team. It doesn't help that we don't have a pitching staff, but you're not hitting the ball. Almost every single person in this lineup on a nightly basis was drafted in the first 4 rounds of their respected draft, outside of Mullins and O'Hearn. So to me, there's a disconnect with the draft status and the talent level as opposed to the output. But Brandon Hyde is the one that was getting them ready every single day to go to work, and it wasn't working. They were getting their asses kicked more times than not. And the jig was up, Charles, because he won 101 games 2 years ago. He won 91 games the year after that. But in that stretch of 192 wins, he lost all 7 playoff games with this team.
Yeah, no question about it.
And that is inexcusable. And then you start this year and you get fired and you're 14 games under 500. You have to answer to that. That is something that you have to answer to. We know that he didn't put the roster together. That's going to fall on Elias, because when this season's all said and done, Elias is probably going to be out of a job. If he's not, there's something crazy going on. But Hyde is the man. He's the manager. He was the one that had to answer and atone for what this team was doing on a nightly basis.
I like Buck Britton as the manager. I keep hearing he's too young. I don't know if that's the case with this team, because in this team in particular, you look at all your good players, Gunnar, Jackson Holiday, Adley, etc. They all work with Buck in the minor leagues. So even though he's a young guy, I think guys respect him. I think that would make logical sense. The other option you could go is you go big, which is obvious, which I don't think they're going to do. You could go get Joe Madden, Skip Schumacher, guy like that. Is that, what would you like to see? Because I loved your discussion the other day when I saw it, like on your show, about, because it's hard in baseball to pick a manager. What would you like to have seen to take his spot?
Well, Buck had his success with everybody on the roster at some point in time the last 4 years. But I don't think as a rookie manager, you're going to throw Buck Britton into this type of scenario where the team is reeling. Now, if you would have told me that you were going to give Buck Britton the reins at the beginning of the year and Hyde would have been fired in the offseason, I'd have been okay with that. But this pitching staff is abysmal. You're now to the point where you're putting backup third baseman in to pitch and getting absolutely shelled by the Boston Red Sox.
And that was the right decision, man. Because because the bullpen is all chewed up. I mean, they're getting, even Batista struggling because they're every night they're 5, 6, 7.
There's still something wrong with Batista. There's the mismanagement of this pitching staff has been of epic proportions. I hope that somebody somewhere down the line at Netflix or ESPN is paying attention and they do a Untold or a 30 for 30 on the downfall of this Baltimore Orioles team. Because if you would have told me back in February that this team was going to be 17 games under 500 at the end of May, I'd have laughed at you. If you would have told me that everybody on this team is not hitting with the exception of Jackson Holiday and Ryan O'Hearn, I wouldn't have believed you. There's so much that's going wrong that Buck Britton would have been thrown to the wolves. You're down in the division 16 games right now. You know, the Yankees are running away with this division. You're not even better than Boston or Toronto at this point, or Tampa Bay for that matter. Britton would be a good manager if it was still, you know, the beginning. Like if you would have went in to this with him, and they made the right choice not giving it to him or Robinson Chirinos, who's a great baseball mind. He's a great bench coach. But those guys are rookies at the major league level. I think if this was next year, I think Buck would have been the guy.
Who would you give the job to? So Matt Trigger is now the GM of the Baltimore Orioles, or David Rubenstein, you're the owner. and you're making the decision, even not even let's even now go past even interim status the rest of this year. Like at the beginning of the 2026 season, who would you like to see as chair? Now, who do you think? But who, if you're doing it,
Ryan Flaherty.
Ryan Flaherty.
Ryan Flaherty for one reason only. He's still relatively not far removed from the game itself as a player. He's been a bench coach in the major leagues for the last 3 years. He's a former Oriole that the fans love and respect. And he still has the mind, but yet he's still current enough to where he could adjust to an analytically driven major league team, because they rely on analytics more than their baseball gut. And that's part of the reason why we're failing right now, I believe. But Flaherty makes the most sense. I was banging on the table last December for Terry Francona. I thought Terry Francona would have been the perfect manager to get us through the next phase of where this team was going. And he signed with the Cincinnati Reds. And the day after, Mike Elias came out and gave Hyde a vote of confidence for this year. Joe Madden's not going to tolerate that analytical bullshit. Excuse my language.
No, you're good. But Joe Madden is going to do things his own way. He's not going to. Yeah, we know this. Joe Madden, I think, is the best manager. I think one of the best managers I ever saw. Even he couldn't make it work out. But I think like what he did in Tampa was a miracle. People don't realize how hard it was.
He's been great everywhere he's been. But the thing is, he's not going to put up with a GM like Mike Elias, who is going to base everything on numbers on a screen, and then he's looking to save. Mike Elias looked to save the Houston Astros owner money. He never spent. It almost killed him when they traded for Verlander. You know, I'm like it's just incredible. It's incredible how the fact that we have a billionaire owner who said spend money, and then his version of spending money was going and getting a 41-year-old Charlie Morton for $15 million, and then a 35-year-old Sagano who's never pitched in the major leagues for $13 million. And then you gave up a clearly washed up Kyle Gibson. I love Kyle Gibson, but it is what it is. You gave him $6 million.
Feel bad for Gibby. Yeah, he was terrible.
There's no other way to
slice it. No other way to slice that.
And then right now, your $16 million outfielder is on the IL. He's probably not going to play much more baseball for the Baltimore Orioles. It wouldn't surprise me if they traded him for a bag of.
Saw an article on that today. They're looking to get rid of him already.
It's going to happen. The O'Neill experiment is over in Baltimore for the most part. He's probably going to stay on the IL until, he's probably going to play a couple games to show that he's healthy, and then they'll send him packing for a mid to low level A or AA ball prospect. It's yeah.
Let's go to Mike Elias. We've been talking about it in there. I have had. You said you worked in the prison system. I worked in corporate America, and Mike Elias aligns me a lot of guys I see in corporate America. I cannot get a read on him. He's very corporate, very. I mean, he said, word salad is the word. I mean, he's just hard to get any real players can sense that. I think yes. I mean,
he says everything with saying nothing. It's from the book of Baltimore management and coaches in this city. John Harbaugh is infamous for saying everything and nothing all at the same time, and it's bled over into the Baltimore Orioles. Elias is putting out these lengthy, wordy press releases. He went on a damn media tour defending his actions and Brandon Hyde, and then fired him a week later. It's absolutely insane.
I did hit him with the uncool where he did not show up the day he was fired. Him on Rubenstein.
Of course he didn't.
That's not. No. Jackson Holliday's been in the league about 35 minutes and was answering questions. Come on, where's the GM? Where's the owner?
He's a coward. He's an absolute coward.
That was cowardly. I won't go that far, but that was cowardly. That was because that is exactly what
He's evading.
The Bucks did.
He's
in the
evading
Rockies.
responsibility. He fired this man and didn't even show up to the ballpark that day. Brandon Hyde got a full statement release and nothing else. He didn't get it. There wasn't an exit press conference. Elias didn't hold a press conference announcing the new manager. They just announced it. You know what I'm saying? Like that, to me, it was done all wrong.
Who actually fired him then? Do you think he didn't show up? I didn't know this. So he didn't show up. He didn't show up the day he fired him. He didn't. Then who actually?
We don't know if he was even at work because he didn't come out on the radio. He didn't hold a press conference. He didn't do any of that. It was a press release. It was a sad press release. Yeah. And to me, it just mirrors the whole situation for the 2025 Baltimore Orioles. Flat out. There's no other way to get around it.
I read the press release. Yeah, I know there was a press release, but I was like, why isn't
at the end of the day?
I'm not going to go to politics. I'm not going to go to politics too much, but I'm just using these two people as an example. Donald Trump in the election, and you had Kamala Harris. Donald Trump is old school, had old business. He's front facing. He has no problem speaking to people, et cetera, et cetera. With Kamala, new era, very corporate, very cautious, doesn't want to say things. Which is more likable, winnable, especially when you have tough times? You know what I'm saying?
I get the reference.
That's what Mike Elias is. Mike Elias is a person with that word salad. Trust me, that's not necessarily who I like to vote for. I'm just using that as an example. But this is an issue. Do you think his baseball acumen though can get him to where they need to get him, or can it get a team to where it need to get him? Resoundingly liked in baseball before this year, Mike Elias. Wild praise.
Yeah, he was, and it was because the team was winning. Even with the postseason lack of success, the team was still winning a lot of baseball games. And now they're seeing that Elias didn't make a concerted effort to keep Corbin Burns, and then you don't go get Max Fried. You don't get Blake Snell. You don't get Nathan Eovaldi. You don't get any of these guys that are A and B level pitchers. You don't try and get Sean Manaea. You don't try and get any of these guys to replace Burns to a degree.
And you don't draft them. That's the big problem too. You're drafting all these outfielders, which is I know why they're doing it. They're doing it because when you're in the draft, those are the better players, especially in recent years. Outfielders, shortstop, catcher, those are the good college players are. It's easier, better bet. But at some point, if you're going to keep doing that, you need to do what you're saying. You need to sign Blake Snell. You need to sign Corbin Burns. You need to sign Max Fried. You need to spend money there. You can't just – because that's the whole problem this year. We're talking about everything else. To me, like every game, you're giving up 5, 6, 10, 8, 19 run. Like I don't know how you even get around it. And all your offensive guys, half of them are injured, and then you got some who are struggling. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, it's not just that. I just totally believe that he did.
I know, man.
He did these half-hearted attempts. He didn't bring anybody in. Charlie Morton, Sagano, Gibson, all that money right there that you spent on those three, you could have paid Max Fried that same amount of money to pitch for us. Garrett Crochet cost a lot of prospects to go to Boston. He's having a hell of a year in Boston on top of that. But what the White Sox were asking for from Baltimore, Elias wasn't willing to kick out. But on the flip side of that, all these prospects are starting to age out of the prospect name. You know, Jackson Holiday wasn't going anywhere. Samuel Basayo isn't going anywhere. But Kobe Mayo is 22, and you've essentially ruined Kobe Mayo because you refuse to give him consistent major league at-bats. You want to put him in for spot duty. You don't want to give him 4, 5, 6 starts in a row to get something going. Heston Kjerstad is a 25 home run a year guy if you put him in the lineup every single night.
He was the best player on the field today. I thought he was good.
Yeah.
He had a hit today, and he finally had a really good defensive play out there in the outfield.
He robbed a home run. So, I mean, who knew what the White Sox truly wanted? I heard that, there was rumors they asked for Basayo and Jackson, or they asked for one or the other. And this is what happens when you value your prospects more so than bona fide major leaguers. And I'm going to compare it 1 second to the football side of this town. Ozzie hoarded draft picks. He never wanted to trade draft picks to get bona fide players in here. And then when Eric DeCosta took over, he didn't mind trading mid-level draft picks and even higher draft picks. He traded for Yannick Ngakoue. He traded for Calais Campbell. He traded for Roquan Smith. He traded for Marcus Peters. So he was willing to bring in proven veterans to win now, as opposed to holding on to the what if of these guys down the road. Because now the chickens are coming home to roost. All the prospects are here. I mean, other than Honeycutt and Enrique Bradfield and maybe Dylan Beavers, you don't have anything in the minors.
Griffel Farrell, I think I like too.
But he's 4 years away at least. You're talking he's 3 or 4 years away from even sniffing the major league roster.
I think the other problem I have with the prospects is you're not committing long term. Where's my Gunnar Henderson extension? Right?
It's not going to happen. They're
all
Boris clients. Every single one of them. They're high draft picks.
Well, then what you holding on to him for? That's my point. Like the difference, and you made a great point about the money you could have spent on Freed as opposed to Morton and Sagano and all those guys. The difference is Freed requires a commitment. He's gonna want some years. Gunnar is gonna want some years. You could have had Gunnar sign a couple years ago, but you decided, well, we're gonna not do that. We're gonna
I don't believe that, Charles. Respectfully, I don't believe that. The guys that are represented by Boris are not signing away their arbitration years. Boris has openly said that he advises his clients against signing long-term deals and buying out arbitration years because it lowers their annual average value of their contracts. He wants his guys to go to free agency. He wants them to test the market, and he wants them to get the best deal possible. It's blown up a couple times in his face in the last couple of years, but if you're telling me right now that Gunnar Henderson is going to sign 15 years here for $500 million or $600 million, it's not going to happen. He's going to wait until he's in more of his prime, when he's a pending free agent, and he's going to go see what Boston and the Yankees and the Mets and the Phillies and the Dodgers and the Giants, what they all have to say about it. That's just the reality of it.
I think I keep hearing this, and you may be right about that. And you may be right about the Boris thing, and I keep hearing people say the Boris thing. The thing is, that doesn't stop the Orioles from offering him a contract, which they haven't done.
They're not going to take
it. Even if he doesn't take it, you sit there and or if you know he's not going to take it, you go on media and you say, hey, this guy's our future. You come out and you start you just don't just wait. And that's
but then you're setting the bar low. Because in that regard, if you offer Gunnar a 10-year deal right now for $400 million, in a couple of years, that $40 million a year is going to be the benchmark for where negotiations are going to start. Especially if he gets an MVP in the next couple of years. He's not signing right now. Nobody with Boris is signing right now. Westberg's a Boris client. Jackson's a Boris client. Gunnar's a Boris client. I believe Grayson Rodriguez is a Boris client. The only big name star we have on this team that is not associated to Scott Boris right now is Adley Rutschman. And are you going to pay Adley Rutschman crazy money? Because there's a good chance Adley Rutschman is your first baseman next year. And Basayo is your catcher.
One of those guys is going to have to move if you're not trading Basayo. I actually don't know which one, but they both are not going to be the everyday catcher. I know that much. I think
Think about that.
I think probably you're probably right because he's older. Adley is not 21 years old like Jackson Holiday either. Adley's going to be 28 next year. So time is now for him. So I think that's very much could be right that they could move Adley.
They should move Adley, but the thing you risk with Adley is if you move him to first base in his contract year, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to piss him off and he's going to not sign and he's going to leave, or he's going to have a fantastic year defensively and offensively at first base. And now you're going to have to pay him long-term first base money as opposed to long-term catcher money. And by all accounts, first basemen make a lot more than catchers.
Do you think they sign Adley, Gunnar, any of them? Do you think none of them just sign?
I think right now it all depends on this next manager and who the next general manager is, because if Elias goes, if Elias stays and he goes and gets another Elias guy, and one name that's been linked that's an Elias guy is Carlos Beltran. If that's scary, because now you're pretty much telling this team, I'm bringing in my guys now. I'm doing it my way 100%. I'm bringing in a manager that bought in because Beltran won a World Series there in Houston, and at the time Elias was an assistant general manager when they won the World Series. So if Beltran believes in the Elias way, that could be a managerial hire. But are these guys going to want to play for somebody who has Elias's thought process? And Elias is all about saving money and not spending money. They spent in vain with those three guys we talked about a couple of minutes ago. Between those guys and Tyler O'Neill, that's half of the Orioles payroll, if you really think about it.
It's just window dressing, though.
It's all window dressing.
I think like they spent the money so they could almost say that you spent money.
It's putting
it's better than like what you were doing, like not spending anything, and because you're in a rebuild. But you're saying now you could get out there and say you're spending money, but you haven't committed to anything. You haven't signed any of your stars. You haven't done any of that. You're not any better off than you were.
If Elias buys if he gets a long-term deal from one of these guys, it's probably going to be Adley before anybody else. Because it's going to be hard, because Scott Boras is going to eat Elias up at the negotiating table. That's just how it's going to go. And I think you need to get a baseball general manager and not a bunch of guys from Harvard and Yale in the front office. You need guys that are going to be a little bit bulldogish and a little bit hard-nosed that are going to take this team to the next level. That's just personally how I see it. I could be wrong. This might just be a fickle year in the end of the rebuild, but we should be a lot better than we are right now.
And one more thing, that last statement you made, everybody is saying that we're going to trade O'Hearn, we're going to trade Sagano. I'm telling you right now, if I'm the Dodgers or the Cubs or Mets and I'm looking for players, I'm not talking about Gunnar Henderson. I'm not. I want to talk about Gunnar Henderson. I want to talk about Felix Petit. I think, like, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I think everybody's going past that. And if you're saying, like, okay, we don't really have plans to sign him.
The thing is, they're not going to tell us that. They're not going to tell us that they're not bringing these guys in. They're not going to tell us that they're not signing these guys long term. There's not a circumstance in the world where Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, or Jackson Holiday are on the trade market. And I know baseball fans or analysts never say never, but the Dodgers aren't going to call here and expect Gunnar Henderson to be available in trade talks. The Giants or anybody, what it would require to get one of these guys is not what they're going to pay.
I think I don't think you necessarily expect it, but if you're telling me you're selling, that's the way baseball teams always do it.
Yeah,
they're going to see if they can pluck. I'm not saying they will.
I don't believe this is a true selling in the old fashioned sense with baseball. I just feel like the team realizes that they're having a down year on the heels of 3 really good years, and they got to cut some of these older guys dead weight, so to speak, and see if they can grab an arm or two for some of these guys, and maybe see what sticks to the wall and who can be a viable major league pitcher at the end of this year, if not 2026 and beyond. A full-on rebuild is making everybody available, but it's only going to be O'Hearn, Mullins, Mountcastle, Eflin, Sugano. Eflin's not re-signing here. With the way the last since we've traded for Eflin, we have gone downhill. Not his fault, but from the All-Star game last year on, we have been
He's been fantastic.
He's been fantastic, but we've been a very bad baseball team.
Yeah.
We traded 2 top prospects for Corbin Burns last year. He came here opening day. He started opening day last year, and he had 11 strikeouts, and they gave him 11 runs of run support. And then for the rest of the year, Corbin Burns didn't receive run support in 50% of his starts. He received 3 or less runs in 50% of his starts.
He didn't need it.
And then,
in his case, at least, most pitchers do, but he didn't.
But what I'm saying is, he also saw the atmosphere. He saw the manager. They lost control of that clubhouse. Those guys tuned him out. And there's and it's still, even with the additions of Sagano and O'Neill and all those guys, this is a very, very, very young baseball team. Very young. And
so
the atmosphere from the people I've talked to that satellite the orbit of this team, they have nap rooms. They have a top golf machine in there. They have ping pong. They have video games. They have it's not a professional environment, even though these guys deserve to let loose and still have fun and be themselves. But you have a nap room.
You didn't say beer, but I know what you mean. Beer.
You know what I'm saying? It's a frat house.
Yeah.
It's a frat house. And the only grown up in the room at times saw it and split town. Now, did the Dodgers offer him a lot of money? Yeah. We offered him a lot of money, but he had 2 more years of security there, and he's going home to where his wife and his newborn twins are going to be close to family. Committing to Baltimore is a stretch for anybody right now, in-house or free agent wise, because you don't know the expectation of this team. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know if they're going to have a new general manager. They're going to have a new head coach or a new skipper next year. So it's a lot. And it's a precarious situation.
Yeah, I hear you, but I'm not sure we answered anything, and this is kind of the problem with the team. We're not rebuilding. We're waiting for next year. We don't have a manager. We're not spending money. We're not extending guys. We're not anywhere, right? We're just.
But they're not going to. They're not going to tell us anything. There were 6 days of silence after Hyde was fired.
Yeah, it wasn't until national media really started getting on him where he said anything. Right. Where he was like, it wasn't just. It was radio silence out of the warehouse for nearly a week after Hyde got fired, and they still haven't really said a whole lot. Manzolino's got 1 win since Hyde was 86th. It's terrible. It's bad. It's bad business. It's bad for the team. They need to rid the stench of this whole 2025 team in October. The day the season ends, after that 9th inning of that last game, you need to fire Elias and get him the hell out of here. Let him go rebuild Oakland, or let him go rebuild the Colorado Rockies or the Chicago White Sox or something like that. I hear you, brother. So let's talk about Fowl Ball and We Bleed Purple podcast. So you were at Driving to the Top. That's how I met you, and all that other stuff. But you have I'm really curious to know what your experience in training was like beforehand. I know what your day job is, but I don't know. Tell me a little bit about how your training was and why, and your podcasting as well, and
Oh
radio.
man. I'm not really trained all that much, but I picked this up during the height of COVID when um all the courts shut down in the state of Maryland, and my detail was essentially put on ice for a while for the prison system. And I was coming home every day, and I got it on the computer, and I was like, you know what? I wanted a podcast, but I wanted to do something different. So I started interviewing people from Baltimore that were athletes and musicians and entrepreneurs and politicians. And I was just doing like a 30-minute interview segment with people from the city or that worked here professionally, and that was in 2020. It's kind of funny, and everything came full circle because the second person I ever interviewed professionally, quote unquote, was Daniel Wilcox, and he did it from Zoom. He was at one of his Airbnb locations that he rents out in Atlanta, and we struck up a friendship that way. And then I started doing more sports centric shows with a buddy of mine, Josh Merrill. We had Charm City Heavyweights for about a year, and then that kind of disseminated. We went our separate ways, and I picked up my baseball and football show. So I separated them because my boy Tim that I do Fowl Ball Talk with, you know, he's a baseball guy through and through. He's a Ravens fan, but he bleeds orange. He's a Orioles guy through and through.
Not
And then
everybody's both. Not
everybody's both. And then when it came to the football show, I was doing my own show for a while after Josh, and I was having different guests on every week, and I was interviewing them and talking about the Ravens games and stuff like that. And then I decided that I was gonna take a chance and try to find a permanent co-host, and that didn't work. And it was crazy because I was doing my show with Daniel Wilcox at the beginning of the 24 football season, and it was on my stream. It was on Driving to the Top. That was one of my last shows I did with Adam. And Wilcox hit me up and he was like, "Hey, I have this show over on the Believe Network. I need a co-host. I'll vouch for you if you want to come over." So he took a chance on me. We had a great run. Last year. We interviewed Brian Billick. We interviewed Todd Heap and Jared
EDC.
Johnson.
I saw the one with EDC.
We interviewed Eric. Yeah, we interviewed Eric DaCosta during Buffalo Bills playoff week. He gave us like 18 minutes, which was incredible. We interviewed Bart Scott, Chris McAllister, a lot of Ravens that were like household names in this city for the longest time. And then nothing really went wrong with Believe. We wanted to branch out onto YouTube more than just being a audio streaming duo. So we started our own podcast, We Bleed Purple, and we've had a couple episodes. We've had like 3 or 4 episodes so far. We just broke down the schedule released last week. We did a show on Justin Tucker when he got released, and we did our introductory show. So that's been a blast working with Wilcox. I've met a lot of people, and it's really surreal because 5 years ago I was pre-writing my questions on a notepad, and then I was typing it on my notes, and I was sending it to the people that I was talking to. I was getting stonewalled. I know that you know this and understand this. The rejections are a lot more frequent than the acceptances when it comes to talking to people and just getting your foot in the door somewhere. But now, over the last 5 years, I've essentially talked to everybody on air over at 105.7 The Fan, which is our flagship station. Get chips, baby. I'm sorry. that was my little
dad stuff. Yeah,
dad stuff. But it's crazy that the whirlwind year I've had, and with the baseball show with Tim, we vibe very well. It's been
How'd you meet Tim?
Tim and I actually went to the same high school. I was a class of 2007 at Mount St. Joe, and he was a class of 2009. So we went to school together for 2 years. And Tim was actually an excellent wrestler while I was there, like an amateur Greco-Roman wrestler. And yeah, man, it was just one of those situations where he followed along to all my shows. He listened to all my interviews. He did everything. But then he was like, I texted him one night and I was like, hey, let me bring you on the show just for like a fan episode. And we got so much feedback that it was crazy.
Cross-examination.
You muted.
One question.
Oh.
Did you? Or did you not change an answer on Tyler Young's exam?
It was just one of those things where Tim and I having to work out really well. We got a lot of positive feedback. So then I made it like a weekly thing for like a couple of weeks, and then a solid month where we were getting 1,000+ live views at a time. And we were like, okay, this is permanent. And now we got to figure out a name for the show. Tim actually figured it out. And, we game planned a recipe for shooting episodes and doing it live interaction with the fans, which is pretty cool that we have at the show. Right now we're doing around 3,000 to 4,000 live every single episode that we do together. So
yeah,
it's slowly climbing. We're getting where we want to be.
How far do you, without revealing anything? I always I ask this question, but I try not to. Sometimes it's hard to answer it because you don't want to reveal stuff you got in the pipeline. But where do you see yourself going with this, and where do you see media as a whole?
That's a really good question, because I got 5 years left in my current career that I'm on right now before I'm eligible to retire from the state of Maryland government service. I just believe that I'm building a solid network of people that trust us, trust both shows, and rely on us, and have a good standing with us, to where hopefully in my next phase of my life, once I'm done corrections, that I can possibly parlay this into a radio spot somewhere in the city. If not, I'm still going to do it. I enjoy what I'm doing. It's therapeutic. It's a hobby that I enjoy immensely, but I would love to make this a life in my 40s.
What do you think of? I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were talking.
No. I'm saying I'll be 41 when I can leave the state of Maryland government.
What do you think of Baltimore radio? This is something I could only ask you. It's like, because we both grew up listening to radio. 105.7 The Fan. I remember when they started. I used to have WNST in my office every day, because that was pretty much the only sports station. I've had every sports. Where are they now? And I'm really, because I'm not there anymore. So I really would like to hear what you think about it. You mentioned the fans here.
So I'm gonna say this, and it's not coming from a place of vitriol or anything like that. WNST is a shell of what they used to be, and WNST, Nasty Nestor Aparicio, he's essentially been a feeder system to Press Box Radio and 105.7 The Fan over the last decade.
Everybody there,
everybody
just about
left.
It is from him. Like he discovered almost all of them. Yeah, Glenn Clark, Jeremy Kahn,
Rob Long,
all of them.
Ray Bachman, who's no longer on radio. Ray's a good
Ken Wyman. Everybody.
Tim Barbalace. Tim Barbalace is a good friend, really good friend of mine, and he's one of the he's like one of the 105.7 like original talent finds. He was never over at WNST, but I'm friends with Glenn Clark and Rita Hubbard. They're a product of that. Glenn was over on WNST for a while. So it's really a one-track city, because the Fan is the only sports radio station in town. And they get all the viewers, they get all the eyes, because they've monopolized it. The morning show is really good with Rob Long and Ed Norris, the former Baltimore City Police Commissioner. and
What
Jeremy
a second
Kahn.
career he's made for himself, man.
Yeah,
Ed Norris. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, he's actually refreshing to listen to. The 10 to 2 slot is Bob Haney, who's a good friend as well, and Vinny Serrato, who I had the pleasure of interviewing about 3 or 4 years ago. I still talk to Vinny occasionally. Vinny, that's a good show. They always have Cordell Woodland on, Ryan Ripken's on there. We've had Ryan Ripken on our show a couple times. So they're a really good listen. It's a little bit of a different listen than the morning show. And then the explosive part of the fan is the Jason Lockenfor led Inside Access from 2 to 6. And it's Tim Barberlace, Ken Weinman, and Jason Lockenfor. And Lockenfor brings a lot of eyes to the product. He's a local guy. He's from here, but at the same time, a lot of people don't like him.
What a 180 it's been for Lockenfor.
I
remember him. He was a football guy at CBS, right? He was
on the NFL Network too. He was
Chris
he was
Mortensen,
he was an insider for a long time.
Yeah, now he's just flaming. I mean, I posted it on X.
It's not even flaming. The thing is, a lot of what he's been banging on the table about for both of these sports teams has really come to fruition. And he's
been proven
proud,
right.
And he's
you're
right. And that's
right about that.
He forecasted both of the situations for this team and their leadership. And here we are 3-4 years later, after shit hit the fan collectively. He lost access to the castle for a while, and he wasn't welcome up at the headquarters with the Ravens. And he was working with Masson for a little while, and then that fell out. And but he's been largely right. People don't like the delivery, but the message is there. And I've done a 180 because I used to argue with Lockenfora on social media every chance I got. And now I agree with Lockenfora more than I don't, which is scary.
Sometimes people are proven right. One more thing here as far as that goes. Real quick with the Ravens here. Draft is over, all that other stuff. Ravens, best team in the AFC this year. I think it's them and Buffalo, the best two teams in the NFL.
In the
AFC, rather, at least.
You know what? I'm a bit exhausted with this right now for the Ravens. I'm still kind of getting over the last couple of years. It took me well into the 2024 season to get over the 2023 AFC Championship loss at home against Kansas City. And then the heartbreak of Buffalo this past January. It's been a lot to stomach. And the Ravens win a lot of football games, but they don't win when it matters. And I'm not going to say that we're the best team in football until they're playing in the Super Bowl and representing the AFC. That's just where I'm at. All this conjecture about the Bengals, coming back and, Buffalo being the best team and Kansas City still hanging around. And, it's all bullshit to me. Until Lamar Jackson can beat either Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen when it matters, I don't want to hear any of it. Like, just win these games, get to the tournament, and then steamroll people. I don't want you steamrolling people in October. I'm over that. Win in January. That's exactly what the 2012 Ravens did. They got in barely. They were 10-6. They barely got in the playoffs. And then they went on a historic run. Don't exhaust that high-powered offense in October, November, December, and then lay an egg in January. I don't need that. This city doesn't need that. Get to the playoffs and then make sure you're clicking on all cylinders and go from there.
Well said, brother. From South Baltimore, tell the people where we can find you with all the things that you're doing right now.
I appreciate that, man. It's been a pleasure coming on this show. I always enjoy talking Baltimore sports with you. You can find us over on YouTube for baseball. It's Fowl Ball Talk podcast with Tim Malarkey and myself. Then there's a YouTube channel we have with me and Wilcox, We Bleed Purple podcast. Just type them in your search engine, you'll be able to find us. On Twitter or X, it's mtrigwbp. And if I'm on Facebook, you can just type in my name and I'll pop up. I usually interact with everybody that watches our shows anyway. So yeah, that's where you can find me. We got a baseball show coming in the next couple of days. We're gonna recap some of the last couple of series and this abysmal stretch since Manzolini took over. And yeah, me and Wilcox will be back with the next batch of Ravens news in probably next week or so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank Matt for joining us here today. Thank everybody watching the Ravori Sports Podcast here. Like and subscribe to all of our social media content.